All right, advanced electronic music. So this is my little video that I'm making for you about today's project or assignment, which, if you ask me, is probably the hardest thing we've done so far in this class. It's the most musical in some ways, and it requires a fair amount of thinking and a fair amount of um, I don't know, coordination with all your elements to really make this work. Okay, so but I do want to go through a couple examples and talk about all the little features I've done and explain to you how to do them. All right. So again, we're talking about creating motion and tension in electronic music. And again, this is the classic build up before the drop kind of situation that can happen in all kinds of music and can happen in soundscapes as well. So it's not, although the example I'm going to show you, or one of them, is very kind of classic electronic music, I'm really throwing that together because it's fast and easy, and I can demonstrate it pretty easily. So to start off with, I have really 5 elements that I've picked that you can use, and I recommend you try all of them as a way of making this work. And the first one, of course, is expanding the frequency spectrum. Okay, and this is done in many different ways. The most common, again, is to use a filter sweep, right? So use a low pass filter and slowly open up the frequency spectrum using automation to make it slowly widen out, right? And the intensity will change as it grows in volume, but also the sound will transform over time. The second one, and the first one in addition to this is also about using octaves, right? So we talked about expanding an octave above to open up that upper octave and to make the synth sound like it's intensifying in a way. Sometimes it's directly, obviously an octave. Sometimes it just sounds like the synth is expanding, but really what you're doing is sneaking in another synthesizer on top of that at an octave higher. And that's what I do in one of my examples. The second one is to create white noise filter sweeps, okay? And I will demonstrate again how to do this, and I use it in the example that I'm going to show you in a second here. The third one is building rhythmic complexity and intensity, okay? And honestly, this is mostly about either accelerating rhythms in some way or just flat out introducing rhythms that weren't there before that then start to move the motion forward with faster note values, right? And this is a really useful technique as well. Number 4 is adding more layers to increase intensity and volume. And this is kind of a natural, it ends up happening when you add more elements as you build towards the downbeat, right? Here I'm using 4-bar phrases, but you wouldn't necessarily have to. And then the last one is to use reverse crash cymbals as effects, right? So that classic sound that we've heard a million times with different sounds, where something kind of swooshes and we get that sound like that. It's that reverse cymbal or reversed crash cymbal sound that is so effective and useful. So I have I've spent the last 20 minutes or so kind of putting together this little example. And I wanted to do something a little bit different because, and again, this example I'm going to use as an example, and then I'm going to build another one from scratch to show you kind of how I do this and also to kind of build one from scratch. But this I was able to spend a little more time with, so I think it's kind of neat. It's a little bit different than the one we did in class, and it makes some cool sounds. So let's take a listen to this. It's in a weird time signature, basically 7/4, or in this case I'm doing a 3/4, 4/4 time signature change every other bar, so it's kind of alternating. And then I've built kind of a small drop. In fact, I could relabel this drop. It's not really a drop. It's more like the first chorus maybe, or even the first verse. This sounds intro-ish, so you could call this the intro. And first build up, maybe, it's leading to the drop in measure 17, which is kind of a realization of the ideas before, but you'll hear how it changes, okay? And also the synths I'm using. So I'm using simply ES2 and RetroSynth. Those are the only 2 synthesizers in this whole thing. And then I grabbed some audio files of drums from some things that I have. But other than that, it's ES2 and RetroSynth only. And I didn't do that on purpose. It just happened to turn out that way. But here we go from the beginning. Let's listen to this. Okay, so a little funky, kind of Halloween-y, I think, could be something, I don't know, it's kind of cool. It's a cute little thing. But a lot of neat sounds, some funky sounds too here that are a little bit different and unusual to what we've been doing in the class or what I did in the other example. But let me just talk about the individual elements. So first off, if we look at this first instrument, first of all, it's this is kind of my lowest instrument. It's kind of the bass sound, right? And all I'm doing on this is a simple filter sweep. So I have an EQ on here, obviously, and I'm doing your classic filter sweep up the scale. And again, I've done also a boost at the Q level. I've raised this up to give me a nice resonant peak right before the cutoff, which intensifies that cutoff moment, right? Which isn't necessary, but I think it enhances that sound and makes it more interesting. So literally this is all that I'm doing. I'm just filter sweeping this up, okay? Now in combo with that sound, I have doubled this. It's actually 2 octaves higher on this, what's called fifth sequence. And I believe this is just a retro synth setting. Like I literally just used a preset, it's nothing special. I think I cut out some of the attack time to make it a little punchier. But other than that, and all I did here is you can see that there was a channel EQ in here because I copied it, but I got rid of it. And all I'm doing here is a volume sweep, right? So the volume is going from basically nothing, sweeping up. And so the two of these sounds together have this sense of intensifying this little rhythmic element, right? So if I solo these two, you can hear them together. So now you start to hear the second octave coming in. Okay, so it's a really simple effect, but the two of these together are kind of building that main line. Going on, if we come down here, one of course the classic sound is ES2. I'm using a filter sweep in ES2, which I will explain in the rest of the other part of the video. But basically, using ES2, I'm using only the third oscillator, and I've set it to noise, and that gives me a classic white noise sound when I play notes on the keyboard. So literally, I just recorded some notes on the keyboard. I made sure that this cutoff right here was open because I don't want it to filter out the sounds. And I'm using, again, the classic bandpass filter here under the Fat FX to sweep this forward and back, right, as I go in real time, right? And I did this using automation and using touch, but then I went in and just changed it. And you can see now I have a bandpass low and a bandpass high, both passing in on a single straight line, okay? And that gives you, of course, the classic filter sweep sound, right? It's just building up, kind of comes out of nowhere. It's something you won't even really think about or notice until it's pointed out to you, right? It's not a big definitive sound, but we hear this absolutely everywhere, okay? So there's that, and then in addition to that, I actually introduced this sound, which is at measure 9. So after the fourth repeat, this rhythmic element comes in. right? And it slowly builds in volume. And then it does this crazy slide up an octave right here. Okay? And then the volume cuts out, maybe a little too dramatically. So what happens though is that I'm doing several things. First of all, the volume is changing, and I'm able to achieve that nice whoop, that big pitch shift through glide, right? My glide setting here in ES2 is really high, almost 2000 milliseconds, so 2 seconds long. And since I'm going up 2 or 3 octaves, it takes 2 seconds to achieve that. It gives you this cool effect, which again is part of that opening up the texture, right? I'm getting a new sound that's opening up these higher registers, and it's cool. I'm introducing a rhythmic element, and I used, again, the tremolo rate. And I programmed the tremolo rate to change over time, right? So the rate starts at 16th notes, and then it goes to 32nd notes, and by the end, it's cranking up even higher to intensify that rhythmic element, right? And then that's it. Well, oh, that's not true too. I use the same hi-hats I used in the main section here, but I filtered them a lot. So I added some distortion, and I filtered them low so they actually don't have a whole lot of sound. In fact, if I play them, right, so they have this pretty distinctive, and they start to intensify because I'm again letting more frequencies in, right? And I'm using a reverb to soften the sound a little bit. And then at the last moment, I use a reverse cymbal to make this all come together onto that downbeat, right? And that's basically what I used to build this, all right? So let's listen to it one more time, and then we'll move on to another one. So, and then, you know, I just did a little bit of composing a little bit for fun. This little section afterwards, I added this arpeggiator. Don't judge me for my clipping in my main outputs because it does clip a little bit. I didn't bother to go through and try and fix it. So let's listen to this one more time, all together. All right. Anyways, kind of cool, kind of fun. This synth I think is a little too loud still, but it's kind of neat. I think it could be tighter and more intensified, more pointed than it is. It's a little too loosey, but sounds cool. And you know, the real buildup here is really nice, so that works well. Okay, so let's do something like this again from scratch. All right, just so you can see exactly all the little components that I do. So let me start over here, make a new project. And you know, this won't turn out as good because I can never make stuff on the fly that turns out great. I mean, I'm usually not very good at it. So I'm going to choose something, choose Alchemy. And then, you know, just for time's sake, of course, I'm going to go in here and just use something. I mean, I'm going to use plugins so that I can just get a quick sound really quickly. All right. That's a little too weird. Let's just get some regular chords. I just want some regular. That's cool though. Yeah, these are too weird. I'm looking for just, you know, maybe I'll find a pad here. That's kind of nice. Man, Alchemy's great. I wish I was good at sound design because that is good right there. So let me record. I'm going to turn my metronome on so it plays the whole time, and then I'm going to hit record here and get cracking. Started out really bright and then kind of took, let me quantize this, tanked a little bit. I also had a little bit of quantizing mistakes here. Adjust all these to the 8th note. Okay, and now that I have a good sound, a good chord progression, now let me find a little bit solid, more solid a synth. That's nice. Okay, so let's go with that. And I'm going to start by, of course, this is going to duplicate, right? It's probably going to happen 2 or 3 times, at least twice. So let's just do this, move this over. And then, of course, the second time I'm going to do something to make it different, but let's start off by doing a filter sweep. So I'm actually going to do something where a little bit different, where I have a first arrival here at measure 9, okay? So add EQ. Add in my low pass filter, pull this down a bunch. Come on, pull down. Pull down. I'm going to raise this up so I get a nice little peak at the beginning. Let's hear what this sounds like. So that's a nice sound already. Man, that's just beautiful. Let me lower the gain because I know this is going to get too loud. But now I'm going to do the filter sweep. So again, open automation. Right, so John talked about this in class. A key turns on automation. Then I go up here to read and I change this to touch, okay? And what I want to do is I want the filter, I need to choose the filter. So the easiest thing to do is if I touch this number one time, it's the parameter I want, the touch up here is going to switch to that value, right? One time, now it says high cut frequency. So now I can start building in my little sweep here, okay? And the thing is, I may actually make a shelf and then do another sweep up to full volume. Let's see how this sounds. Yes, absolutely beautiful. Very nice. All right, so that is done. I am done with that. One thing that I want to do, I'm going to use this trick where I duplicate this track. I move this same thing down here. I'm going to take all of these notes up 1 octave, okay? So I'm going to grab them, okay? And the next thing I'm going to do is take this second track and add the tremolo to it. Okay, so because what this is going to do, of course, probably put this at 16th notes, take out the smoothing. So remember, again, the tremolo is under modulation. So let me just show you that again. Tremolo, modulation, tremolo, it's at the very bottom. I select it. I have to take out the smoothing to make it choppy, sound, give that nice intense rhythm, okay? I'm going to take out the phasing right here, right? Because I don't want it to do the kind of oscillating back and forth with speakers. I want them to pulse together, all right? And then the last thing I'm going to do is, I want to do something to change this sound so it's a little bit more edgy maybe. So I'm going to actually go in here to distortion and pick out the bit crusher. And I'm going to downsample this a little bit. Now let's hear what this is going to sound like. I can solo this by itself and just hear what it sounds like by the mid section. Okay, so now I've added this in, and it has an edginess to it because of the bit crusher. But what I want to do is it's way too loud. So I'm going to go to volume. I want this to just be a slight gradual adding in this sound, right? So I'm going to slowly ramp this up over the course of 15 bars. And it should come out of nowhere and then kind of not really sound like its own synthesizer. It should sound like it's being added into the synth, okay? So let me go back. So I want to, I'm going to grab the curve tool too and just make it kind of ramp at the end for intensity's sake. But that's really cool, just those two things together. Okay, so now let's build a filter sweep. Okay, your classic filter sweep, but this time I'm going to use ES2, which I tend to use more than I do with what's it called, Alchemy. Okay, I mean, I think it's just because I've used ES2 so much. So I'm going to grab an ES2 track, create, okay? And I'm going to go in here to ES2. And I know, first of all, I need the noise oscillator, okay? There are 3 oscillators in ES2. I'm going to turn off numbers 1 and 2 by clicking these 1 and 2 buttons, and then moving this down to noise, all right? And this gives me this sound, okay? Your classic white noise. If I hold down a bunch of notes at once, it plays more, okay? And another thing I want to do is I want to go over here to the filter and remove this frequency cut. Right now it's cutting basically half the frequency range. I want to crank that up so I get the full frequency range of that synth, okay? And now I want to record 16 bars of that, which is super easy. Hit record, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, instead of playing awfulness for 16 bars, I'll just go in here now and make these notes longer. So open that up. I'm going to quantize these notes first of all so that they start on the downbeat, and then I'm going to drag them over for the entire length of this beat, okay? So now obviously this sounds terrible because we just get a wash of this, right? What we need to do now is filter it. So I'm going to go down, open up my plugins, go down to multi-effects, okay? And this is where the fat with a PH FX live. And I go to stereo, okay? And it pulls up the fat FX, which is just a really amazing effect panel. It has tons of stuff in here that I can do. Specifically, there's several ways of doing this actually, and I'm going to show you a different way than the bandpass. So the first thing I'm going to do though is I need to turn off the bass enhancer, turn off the compressor, turn off the distortion. All I want is this bandpass right now, okay? But I'm actually not going to use this because for various reasons. But I could create a filter sweep like by doing this, right? Resizing this and then doing your classic filter sweep like this, okay? But watch what happens also if I open the filter. I can really do it over here in the filter too. Probably want to put some edge on there with the resonance, right? And I'm really getting the same result from that filter that I was getting before, okay? Now, another thing I want to always do with these is add some reverb to round them out because they send they tend to be a little bit intense, and you want to make this kind of background sound, right? It's going to be in the background, and it's going to be slowly pushing, like it's meant to be an effect that you don't necessarily hear really intensely. It's just back in the background. So anyways, what I need to do then, if I want to automate this cutoff frequency, right? It's the moment at which that filter is cutting out. So I'm going to go in here to read and hit a touch, right? And I'm going to open this again, FX Fat, and click on filter one time, right? And then once again, now this is filter cutoff, right? So it's already switched to filter cutoff. So now I'm going to go in here and make my filter sweep, okay? Now, I find with these, they really do sound best if they're a exponential curve. So T for tool palette, automation curve tool, and then I can sweep this up. Okay, so let's hear how this sounds now. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to slide this out further, and also I think that this is going to sound better if it's even more exponential. So right at the end, whoosh, doom, right? It's going to sweep fast to that downbeat and then move on and measure 17 to whatever music is there, right? All right, so now that I've got that done, I want to, it might need to be louder, but we'll fiddle with it later. I want to add another element, right? And let's add the classic kick drum that intensifies over time, right? So I'm going to grab an audio track. Actually, no, I won't. I'll go and use Ultrabeat, just like you have available. So I'm going to make a new track, grab Ultrabeat, which again is Logic's drum machine that I don't love, I have to say. Has really, the samples are okay. They're not mixed very well, and so they just don't sound great. But I can still, I'm going to go in here in the drum kits and find like classic, I don't know, what do I want? Electro bump? I don't know. We'll try something. It's got a, that's fine. That's way too intense. Bass kick? No. This will work. What I'm going to do is, the kick drum has way too much upper register, so I'm going to remove a lot of it. As I've said before, you can see all of this sound in the upper register. We don't want any of that, right? What I want is the low thumping noise. So I'm not going to get rid of the lowest of this, boost this up a little bit, but what I'm really going to do is cut this down. Okay? And I might even give myself a little peak right here. Oops. Yeah. Oh, that's the wrong one. Peak right here. So you can see that secondary pop. That's intensify that a little bit. And then let me raise this up again so I get an even better sound. Now, again, I'm clipping, not with just that sound, but in general, I'm clipping. But now I just need to record this, okay? Now, the easiest thing, again, is just to go in here and just record it. So I'm going to just grab the pencil and go down here to kick. Oop. Man, dude, why is it giving me such a long note value? Reduce that down. And I'm literally just going to, I think this needs to be on every measure. Oh, it needs to be on every half beat. And I have to say, I still think there's, as a starting sound, there's still too much. So I'm going to reduce the upper frequencies even more as soon as I'm done with this. Because really what I want is almost that heartbeat, behind the scenes sound, right? So let's do this even more like that. Okay, let's hear this. Oh, so once again, I do want every eighth note. So the easiest way to do this, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to reduce this by half. Then I'm going to option drag, and I get every beat. Okay, so and then again, I'm actually going to also do a filter sweep on here, just to loosen the kick up a little bit as it goes. So click on that. I've already selected touch, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it rise just a little bit, right? Okay, and again, one of the big features of this is in the last bit here, you know, if I really want to do this in the classic clubby thing, probably makes you guys miss going out and doing fun things. Believe me, I hear you. Haven't been to a restaurant in 6 months. This type of thing, measure 9. Actually, I don't want to do it there. I'm going to start at measure 12, or 13. That's the halfway mark of the second group of 4, right? Of 4 bars. So let's do that. And then in the last beat here, the last measure I'm going to do is even faster, right? So we get that classic, right, on every beat. So let's hear, I mean, we don't need to hear this. We know how it sounds. I don't want this video to be 45 minutes long. So let me go to the next item, okay? I want on measure 9 to introduce some sort of hi-hats, okay? So, and this gets to a cool moment in this track where I can actually do a secondary sweep to introduce that moment of hi-hats, okay? So let me show you what I mean. So I'll use Ultra Beat again. Let me actually duplicate this track, duplicate, and let's hear how, well, let me get rid of the EQ because it's obviously killing. So the hi-hats are fine. You know, they're gonna probably need some delay. I really, you know, I tend to use hi-hats in MIDI because it gives me the opportunity to make something, I can have a varying, what's it called? I can have really easily, I can vary the dynamics, the velocities of the notes, right? So let's zoom in really closely here. Let me pull up the velocities. And I'm going to do one of these classic sounds where it's da 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 da. Okay? So what I'm doing is the first beat is the loudest, and then the second is the second loudest, and so forth, right? And I'm pulling these velocities down. I could also just go to Tool Palette, Velocity, and move this, right? Okay? And now I'm going to grab this and move it, right? So I'm duplicating. You know, I usually spend a lot more time on this stuff, but again, don't want a really long video. So let's just kind of get this done quickly. Now I've got, the whole thing is done. What is going on? What is with that drum beat? Did I turn on the, oh, I turned on the sequencer. So all I want is that synth, okay? I'm also going to put on a little stereo delay. Okay, so now we have some rhythm going here. And again, it actually sounds really cool to do an EQ filter sweep on the hi-hats. Now it's usually a way tighter filter sweep, but I'm going to filter this up like that. If I go down here, we'll hear nothing, right? Because the hi-hats are so high in pitch. But I'm going to turn this on, touch that right there, and then do a very gentle filter sweep here to bring this up to full frequency by the end, okay? I might start this a little bit lower. That's nice. A little bit higher. I want to hear it when it comes in. Start there, maybe. Okay? Another thing, man, I cannot tell you how much it makes such a difference to go in here every once in a while, add a little tiny extra beat, like a 30-second note. I can literally randomly pick a spot and just add a 30-second note to make this a little more dynamic and just less repetitive. And it just makes a world of difference. In my personal opinion, you guys have all heard me harp on this stuff incessantly. Anyways, if I went through this whole thing, it's a lot of notes. It would take me a long time. But listen to the difference, in my opinion. Right? It's really cool little things going on. It just sounds awesome. Anyways, I mean, I could easily just do this and duplicate this. And then obviously it's going to copy those changes, which, you know, is the poor man's way of doing that quickly. Pull this up to here. So, but like I said, so we have this moment at measure 9 where I want the intensity to pick up. I'm going to make a swoosher that goes just right to measure 9. And the easiest way to do this is with the reverse cymbal, okay? And I will actually share some audio files with you guys to do these things with. But what I'm going to do is just grab an audio file, okay? And honestly, I make some of these things myself, but this is such a tiny little sound. I don't really worry too much about, you know, using someone else's thing. I know I always talk about how awful that is. Don't ever, you know, don't use these sound packs. They're terrible. Little tiny things like this, like individual drums, I do this a fair amount, right? But like I said, what I wouldn't do is borrow a melody from somebody, okay, or something like that. So let's hear how this sounds now from the beginning. Oh, that's pretty good. Now again, this cymbal to me is a little too present. I think it needs a reverb to kind of wash it out a little bit, to make it a little more receded in the background. Let's hear that. It's just too loud too. I'm going to turn it down. I'm also going to turn up the decay time to make it longer, make it a little washier again, and just turn it down. Still too loud. Here we go. Cool. So this one's pretty good. Actually, this is way better than the one I made in class, I think. I want to do one more thing to intensify this whole thing, and it's going to be really cool. I'm going to use arpeggiation to arpeggiate some sort of fast-moving thing that slowly comes in. So I'm going to go to software instrument. Let's grab... let's grab retro synth. See what I can find in here. So that's the sound I'm looking for. Actually, I like that a lot. Way too present. So throw in a reverb. And you know, I would do way more bussing and stuff like that. But I just don't have the time. Okay. That's nice. I want this to be more percussive. I don't want any sustain on it. So I basically want it to die away. That's even too much release. Okay, so that's nice. The sound, it's going to be way too loud. And I'm going to do a filter on it. Not a huge one, but that's going to slowly open up as well. And so now I need to go in and put some notes in here. Now, you know, I could play a keyboard. I'm just going to go in to the note. I'm not really sure. This needs to be way smaller. There we go. 30-second notes. So we're way up here. Let me grab my pencil. I think that's the right note value. Yes, it is. So one thing I love to do with arpeggiations is there's nothing more lame in an arpeggiation than the note values all have the same volume, right? Arpeggiations are always kind of dynamic like this. So, and then I literally am just going to copy this. Now, Command C, Command V, Command V, Command V, Command V. Over and over. Oops. Did that get messed up? No, it's good. So this is kind of a static arpeggiation with the same sound over and over, okay? Now one thing I want to do is, I'm going to go in here to the volumes, and I don't know if you know this, but oops, I don't want to do that. I can do this kind of thing where the volumes change, but I can also grab a swath of this, go to the volume tool, raise it up, okay? Then grab another swath of this and raise it up, and then grab the last bit like this and raise all that up, okay? So the volumes are still the same, but they're now dynamically kind of intensifying, right? I also want to do my classic filter sweeping. So I'm going to start with touch. I'm going to grab my EQ. I'm going to grab this button. And now I'm going to do my sweep. Okay, so grab the pencil. And then do something like this where it opens up over time. Now, I really want this to be in the background. I don't want it to sound, in fact, I may not even want to hear it really until measure 9. So I'm going to go back to volume and really lower this, okay? And then slowly bring it in. Maybe it brings like this. Let's hear what it does and hear how this sounds. So what sounds cool to me is that I want there to be an initial kind of sweep up to this moment. So I'm going to move that node there and then curve it to that moment, okay? So we're almost going to hear nothing, and then suddenly it's going to whoosh in right on that downbeat, and it needs to be right on the downbeat, move to measure 9. Remember how important I said choreographing these things to arrive together really matters, right, is important. And then I'm going to do this again. So let's make another node and grab this node and zip it up. And I'm going to line it up with those other two nodes. I'm going to do the same thing, grab the curve tool and do a curve on it. All right, so let's hear this. Yes, okay. So, I could go even further, right? There's a lot more I could do here to do even cooler stuff. Like, one thing that would sound really cool, let me add one more element and then I'll be done, is to put in an offbeat hi-hat and tss, tss, tss sound, right? So let's duplicate this track. Oops, duplicate it with this button here, duplicate. I'm gonna grab these. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to make a new region here. Go in here. Command 4. I love this window way more than I can't stand the little thing at the bottom. So I pull this up. No. So that's a cool sound. It's going to have too much reverb. I'm going to want to cut some of that out. But let's go ahead and put some notes in here with this. Okay, now again, I can never remember what the resolution should be. Like, is it just here? And I always have to check it because this is probably twice as slow as, well, it's twice as fast. So this needs to be like this. Okay, now let me get rid of that delay. No delay. Volume way down. There we go. Okay. So now we're kind of getting what I'm looking for, and then I'm going to duplicate this. Duplicate. Duplicate. There we go. So I got the whole thing. And that's it. All right. Now, again, I'm going to do another simple filter sweep with this. I don't want it to come in so loud, but I want it to intensify. So lowering this, maybe to there. That's too low. So maybe I'll start it there. Oops, see what happens? I left touch on and I wrote a bunch of data. So let me delete those notes. But now I know where the node is, and then I'm going to slowly open this up, right? I want this to get to full by the end. And I want this sounds a little too loud to me. Turn touch off. Turn this down a little bit more, and let's hear this whole thing, and then I'll be done with this video. Okay, ready? Yes. Okay. Very commonly too, just one more mention, a lot of times these elements actually end on beat 3 of that measure, right? So they would end, boom. Then the downbeat comes with something new, right? Or the full chorus, or really the full thing comes in there. Okay. But I'm going to actually save this because it's not too bad. Call this build up 3, and I will use it probably in another class or something like that. But that is the basics of how I do this, all right? So I know I went probably kind of quickly trying to get through everything, but you saw the basics of how I do this. Now, if I was writing a real piece, there would be tons of panning and automation of that as well. And, again, I'm clipping again, so there's just stuff I didn't cover because I'm getting through it fast. But this is the concepts that we're covering, right? going through, expanding the frequency spectrum with all of these filter sweeps and creating a white noise filter sweep, building rhythmic complexity and intensity by adding hi-hats and other sounds, adding more layers to increase the intensity and volume, especially on measure 9, right? We started adding a bunch of different stuff. And then again, using a reverse cymbal crash as an effect, okay? All right, I will talk to you on Thursday.